and welcome to Wild Ones podcast. We are your hosts. My name's Gillian.
And my name's Alecia. Wild Ones podcast aims to bring you tales of adventure, tales of bravery and tales of resilience.
This is our first episode. So firstly, Happy New Year to our families, friends and supporters. And also big thank you and hello to our sponsors. We'll be talking about them later. We can't do this without any of you, and it's as much your platform as it is ours.
So lots of you don't know us. You may be following us on social media, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're both quite social and out there on social media, but lots of you actually don't know who on earth we are. So we thought it was really important for episode 1 to talk a little bit about who we are, but underneath the surface, let's get down and to the nitty-gritty and ask each other the awkward questions that actually some of our listeners might want to hear about. So when we were chatting about this earlier, we were trying to write some show notes and we weren't really sure sort of like how to start this. I mean, Gillian's got a background in radio and I've got a background in television, so you'd think that we'd know kind of what we were doing. But when it comes to actually that we feel like we really want to get this right for ourselves and for our listeners, and we were like, God, where do we even start? We've had both had like really quite exciting lives up until this point.
But up until right now, everything's been good.
And now we're absolutely terrified that we're laying ourselves bare for all these people that we've made big promises to. So this is scary for us.
It is scary. I'm scared.
But on that note, I asked Gillian what top 3 words would she use to describe herself, and what did you say?
I said I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question before.
It's really hard.
It is hard, and I'm going to ping it straight back on you because I asked you the same question and you said yours have changed recently.
Yeah, they have. So I was asked this as part of I think it was a job interview or an interview for a contract or something, or maybe it was, I've been literally so busy in the last 18 months, I can't remember which is what, but I was asked it of an employer on a course. So I had to think about it and I couldn't answer it for myself. So I actually ended up on my personal Facebook page saying, if you had to describe me in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
See, I need to do that.
It was really useful and it was really insightful because so many people picked the same words for me. So I thought, well, and it was good.
Beautiful.
Because it was some of those words. I thought,
Sassy.
oh yeah, that's me. No, not those 2. So yeah, I think my top 3 were tenacious, which I'd have to agree with, resilient, which I'd have to agree with, and caring, which I'd have to agree with. However, I have just come back from a 6-day course with Team Rubicon, which we will explain to the listeners a bit more about, but Gillian and I are both disaster response volunteers, and I went on a course with them to learn how to kind of manage a situation operationally in the field. So on my operational leadership management course, these kind of things, you personally evaluate yourself all the time. And something that got fed back to me, which I've had said before, but never really thought about it, was that I'm emotionally intelligent.
You are.
Our lights just come back on. And I'd say I was, but it's only something I'd recognised in the last 2 years. And I'm nearly 39, I'm 39 next month, and I would have always been scared of that phrase before.
You're well old.
I am well old. I don't look it, obviously. Thanks, Lisa Toomey, for all the Botox.
I noticed actually at Team Rubicon they talk about emotional intelligence a lot. So when I did the international ops course, they talked then about emotional intelligence as well, and it was something that I thought, oh yeah, that's a thing.
I'd never spent a lot of time thinking about it before.
Yeah, I think those 3 words are good for you. I'm not sure about me. I think I need to ask maybe my social media following. But I think if I asked in work, people would say outspoken, they would say caring, and they would probably say bonkers. Yeah.
I would agree with all of those things. But I wouldn't say that, they're your top 3.
No.
Because we're all a bit bonkers. We're all just winging it.
I know. That's what I think. But people do tend to say that about me. I think I'm a bit nuts. But maybe it's because I work in the city and I go into work with an undercut and people think, oh, look at her. She's edgy. She's crazy.
And
until
actually,
we're famous podcast
if you
hosts.
go back to what we were talking about in terms of your character strengths or the things that would most describe you, the environment that you work in being lots of ex-military personnel, maritime security, male-dominated environment, actually, it probably does you favours to be outspoken, to be a little bit bonkers, because they equally
and to be female.
Yeah.
It really does. All of those things help, to be honest with you. So yeah, I enjoy my job, but they would probably describe me as bonkers. Wouldn't be my top 3. I need to think about my top 3, but I think they probably would. But that's okay.
And
okay
actually,
with being crazy.
I think that all of us have got a little bit bonkers in us, and actually, it's just knowing about. It comes back to the emotional intelligence, knowing about when to bring out the bonkers.
100% know when to bring out the bonkers.
Yeah, I hope that everyone listening can resonate with this, because actually, I try not to be too bonkers all the time, but I like to be able to dip into that bonkers bag and go, out you come on.
Dip into your bonkers bag.
We will try and be as serious as we possibly can when we're touching on serious subjects that require us to be serious. But like, because we bring out each other's bonkers, 9 times out of 10, it sounds like we're talking about something far ruder than what we actually are. So if you like that kind of thing.
9 times out of 10, I am talking about something rude. Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, awkward. So anyway, what else were we going to talk about? Oh, can't get my words out. Was top highs and lowest lows.
Yeah, well,
highest highs and lowest lows in your life.
I'll start with my lowest lows, because actually, and don't get out the small violin, because I don't look for sympathy at all, and I do a lot of public speaking now on resilience, and that's obviously relates back to one of my top 3 words, but I'm as resilient as I am because I've had quite a hard time with life in general. Up until I'd say this point, I see a massive turning point at the minute, which will bring me on to my highs. But I think overall, my lowest lows, which I have overcome, is the fact that I had a really turbulent childhood. My mum was a single parent family, so it wasn't one particular event that I can think of. It is just like, I'd say for a good sort of the first 15, 20 years of my life, I didn't really felt like I belonged. I didn't really feel like I ever got any positive feedback or positive affirmation. So it was very much a struggle to feel worthy. So I still have an issue with self-worth now. So that lowest low was something that really set the tone for my life, and I'm trying to turn that around now, but it's like a learned habit. If you constantly learn to be really harsh on yourself because you're never used to people saying to you, you are good enough, and you're okay, you're kind of all right, and you're the only one reassuring yourself of that, and then occasionally someone will come along and go, you're shit, you shouldn't have done that. That's just confirmation that you think you are shit. So I didn't really know for a long time how to pick myself up and put myself back on my feet. I just carried on trudging along. So throughout my adult life, I've had several more blows, but actually through being resilient and working through them, I feel like I'm finally at a point where I'm like, do you know what, Alecia, you are awesome. You've got this shit nailed now.
You have got this shit now.
Yeah, that's how 100%. I feel. But yeah, I'd say that my childhood was really hard. Another massive low for me was I had my eldest son when I was 23. That's not the low. Obviously, that sounds terrible. But when he was 3.5 years old, he nearly died. He was very, very ill very suddenly, got blue lighted up to Bristol Children's Hospital. And he was in very much like in a sort of in an awake coma. So he ended up with a brain infection called encephalitis. And until the point where he was diagnosed with that, they thought it was meningitis because they're both very similar. But he had autoimmune encephalitis, and the reason why he caught it will never be known because he got blood sent off and several tests done, but it wasn't the usual thing. His immune system basically attacked his own body. Following an unknown virus, and his brain, the lining inside his brain swelled up to the point where his brain couldn't fit inside his skull anymore. So he got really severe brain injury at that time. But thank my lucky stars that actually within 6 weeks of him being in a high dependency unit in Bristol, he was back at home. He was learning to speak again, learning to walk again. And I had just become a police officer at the time. So literally my sister moved in with me to help me care for him. And I was back out at work on district within like weeks of him being out of hospital. So that was a massive low, and you really do take stock of your life when you nearly lose your child. And there will be listeners out there who've been in a similar position, or listeners and actually we've got some people lined up who are similar in that they've either nearly lost a child or they have actually lost a loved one. And it really is a massive wake-up call. Yeah. So that was a low, but again, out of it, something, really good stuff's happened. And thankfully, he's okay now.
He's awesome.
He is awesome.
He's the best kid ever.
And I always say to people, people say, oh, teenagers, they're a nightmare to parent, aren't they? Actually, he's 15 tomorrow, and he is one of the nicest people I know.
He is.
He is awesome.
He's a lovely, lovely boy.
Yeah, so, I'd say those, like, I've had other really bad things happen to me, but I don't want to turn this into a chat about, like, oh, poor me, all these awful things have happened. And I'm sure they'll come out each week when we interview different guests. It's a comfort to be able to resonate with people. So, yeah, I'll hold some of it back now, and we'll share it with our guests.
Calm down, Alecia.
Don't want to get too excited about all the miserable things that have happened. But,
I think I haven't lost a child myself, but my sister lost a little boy who was called Arthur 5 years ago, and that was definitely the lowest point in my life, and obviously in my sister's life, and actually for our whole family, because it was really, really hard for all of us. I was pregnant at the time. We were both pregnant, actually, similar times. Caroline, my sister, had her son Arthur. He was born at the end of December, and at the 6-week check with the midwife, she referred my sister and Arthur to the doctor. The doctor referred them to the hospital, and it took weeks, but by 9 weeks old, he was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy. And they said, there's no cure, there's no treatment. The life expectancy is 7 to 12 months. Take your baby home and enjoy your time with your child, because he is going to pass away possibly sooner rather than later as well, because they said it was quite a severe, for it to be picked up so early, they said it was quite a severe form of, there's different types of SMA, so there's type 1, type 2, type 3, and he was diagnosed with type 1, which to be diagnosed with that at 9 weeks old, they said it's going to be quite a severe form, and therefore it could happen sooner than, even 6 months. So that in itself was hard. And I look back and sometimes think that maybe that was one of the hardest days, was when he got diagnosed, because until that time, all those weeks of wondering what's wrong with him and what's the result going to be, you do, go to bed and think, please, again, not particularly religious, but you think, please God, like, let it not be that, let it be something else. Same with you, I guess, when it was like, is it meningitis or and it did turn out to be the worst thing, and so that was a really hard time for all of us. And I was pregnant, like I said as well, living in London with my family all in Devon whilst this was happening. So that was hard. And then actually when he was 4.5 months old, they went to Little Harbour Hospice in Cornwall, which is part of Children's Hospice Southwest, and they didn't go there because they were expecting him to pass away at that time. They just went there for some like respite and some time away as a family, and they spent a whole week there. And at the end of the week, on the Saturday morning, he passed away in their arms, basically. And what with SMA is it's kind of like, I think older people will have heard more of like muscular dystrophy. It's basically this similar and or the same, don't want to get too scientific, as that. So it's muscle wasting. So I guess over time Arthur just got weaker and more poorly, and passed away on the Saturday morning. And what was hard for me was not only that I was living in London at the time, but also I was then, when he passed away, 37 weeks pregnant. And my son Zachary was born exactly a week later. on the 17th. So Arthur passed away on the 10th of May and Zachary was born on the 17th. And at that point, in that week, I hadn't actually gone to visit any of my family because they'd said, you're full term, you're pregnant, don't travel all the way down to Plymouth, wait and see when the funeral's going to be. We'll let you know what date the funeral is, like stay in London until we know when the funeral is. And then we found out when the funeral was going to be, and then that night my waters broke.
Wow.
Went into labour. And the hardest, well, not the hardest thing of all, but what broke my heart was that I gave birth to a baby boy, and I didn't realise that my mum and my sister were actually on the way up to London to see me, to see the baby.
Yeah.
And so the first time I'd seen my sister since
after
she lost her child was me sat in a hospital bed holding a baby boy, which was heartbreaking. And I remember my mum saying, like, we'd just been into Westfield Shopping Centre and went into Clinton's, and we were looking up and down the aisles for like baby boy cards, and it was just like awful. And actually the first time that I saw any of my family after I gave birth was at Arthur's funeral. So we went down when Zachary was 3 days old for the funeral. So it's just
wow.
And what should have been like a lovely time in my life wasn't.
Yeah. Do you think that really affected you after you'd given birth? Did you have any issues sort of postnatally with your mental health?
I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting because people ask me that, and I think in my head I just kind of carried on and soldiered on because all I could think was, I'm not the one that's lost a child. Yeah. I've got a baby boy and he's alive and he's with me, so I can't be sad. I can't feel any kind of like postnatal depression after having this baby, because this baby is like, I'm so lucky to have this baby. And the only thing, because I remember the midwife coming around and they obviously ask you questions about, they ask everyone questions regardless of what's happened. So I remember the midwife saying to me, like, are you sad? And I said, well, I am sad. My sister's lost a baby. Like, I feel sad every day that that's happened in our family. And she was like, well, in yourself though, like, are you okay? And I couldn't answer that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
go into protective mode when you first had a baby, and you just kind of, you do the things that you're supposed to do because you're so exhausted. Actually, your brain shuts off a bit.
Yeah.
So maybe you didn't allow yourself to think like fully in depth about how you were feeling.
I think as well because it was my first child and I was living in London. We had no family around us. My husband's family live near London, but they weren't, close in terms of, they're not like 5 minutes away in the car. It took about an hour or so to get to them from where we lived. So it was just us in our house with our baby boy, and my husband would go to work every day. And it's a funny time anyway, isn't it? When you've had your first child, it can be, I would wait every day for him to come home from work because I would just want him to hold Zachary so that I could go to the toilet or have a shower or something, even though it was 7 o'clock and I was just in my pajamas all day. Like, did you? Funny time.
I mean, we're going off in a direction that I didn't think we'd go, but actually I think it's really useful to talk about it. Did you, losing your nephew aside, did your mental health struggle because of your circumstances? So your husband was out at work, you were in a flat in London, no family around, and you're on your own with this brand new baby after suffering a trauma. Do you think, looking back on it now, that you were doing okay? Or do you think, actually, I really wasn't doing okay, I just didn't talk about it?
Yeah, probably the latter.
Yeah.
Oh, I've not talked about this before. We're getting emotional already. Yeah, but I think, looking back, I think I wasn't okay. But I also think that I made myself be okay enough to be okay.
And then actually that brings us around to the positive again of, actually, if resilience is, your resilience levels are quite low, you can work on them and use those really shitty times to actually build on your resilience in order to get you through other times, because life's never going to be like completely flat, is it, with a few troughs? You're going to have some highs and some lows. And I recently saw a chap public speaking, and his mum was murdered, and he described his life like looking at your heart rate on a monitor. and it's never ever or rarely in the middle. There is literally, he goes from high to low to high to low, and I personally think that I feel like that's what my life is like as well. But actually, my bounce back ability is only
good word
really good because of all of the shit that I've been through.
100%.
And it actually makes me more concerned for people who live idyllic lives, who sometimes I can look at and think, God, I'm so jealous that you just don't have any drama. But actually, in hindsight, when they have something terrible happen to them, they fall apart and they don't know how to deal with it.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing for any listeners who haven't actually been through any trauma. But if you haven't and you're having a shit time, you can find people around you who've been through a lot of trauma, and they can help you build on your resilience.
Absolutely. Well, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger,
exactly,
as they say, and it's so true. So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's a funny one for me to talk about. Not funny, obviously, but because I always feel like when I talk about that happening in my family and in my life, that it's not my story to tell. Like, I feel like it's my sister's story and it's her husband's story and it's their family's story, but actually it affected all of us. And I remember when they called me on the day that they said he'd been diagnosed with SMA, and I remember turning around to my husband then and saying, this will change us all forever. This is going to change our family now forever, because we knew that he was going to pass away. We knew that there was no cure and there was nothing that they could do. So it was kind of like you're preempting. Like, I remember saying to Ray, like, we're going to have a funeral for a baby boy. Like, we're going to have to do. You already start planning it, even though it hasn't happened yet, because so it's a weird diagnosis and like a horrible thing to have to go through in itself, because, you know, infant loss and the loss of any person actually in your life is a horrible thing, but these things often happen by surprise, especially with babies. It can be cot death, or you don't normally have time to prepare for
no
for
parent
like that.
Is born to lose their child.
No,
you know, in
absolutely.
life, parents are meant to go first,
and to be told your child is going to die probably before they're one, and there's nothing we can do.
Makes you feel helpless.
It's just horrible. Yeah.
And it brings you on to the whole concept of it takes a village to raise a child, and actually that village may be your friends, it may be your family, it may be people who are being supported by social services and other outside agencies to help that person along on their journey as a parent. But you're right, it didn't just affect your sister and her husband, because you were part of her village. You were part of raising that child, and
they're my best friends in the world. But as we're such a close family, so it's not even like we're just family. We're best friends, and we spend so much time together and do so much together. It really affected all of us, and it's sad.
Yeah, I think on that note,
that's lows. That's lowest lows.
Yeah, that is the lowest low. And I think on that note, what we'll do is at the end of the show, we'll put some show notes on so that people have got access to an idea of what SMA is, what encephalitis is, and charities that can support people who are going through not just those two things, but anything else that's similar. I mean, I said I wasn't going to go into it, but just to sort of skim over the subject, I've had a couple of miscarriages and an ectopic pregnancy as well. So all of those things are intrinsically linked, as well as postnatal depression. And actually, although we hadn't planned to talk about this, we are both mums, and I think that is job number one, isn't it? I've got 3 kids and
I've got 2.
Yeah, so I think it's really important actually that this podcast is going to have a different subject matter each week, mainly as we interview our guests, and we didn't really know what was going to come out of interviewing each other, and that's why we kind of put ourselves out there and said, right, let's go for it. But it's going to link back, isn't it, to our own lived experience?
100%.
Yeah, and hopefully, the subject matters that we cover off each week are going to provide not only the people we interview with a platform to talk about how they've been resilient or how they are, sharing their tales of bravery and adventure, which is obviously another huge thing for us and a huge thing for our mental health, to go out on adventures and be brave, because it gives us a boost. But it's also going to be able to help the listener understand how they're not alone. Like, the amount of people I've spoken to who have listened to my story, which brings me back round to public speaking about resilience now, is that there is something in there for everybody. So yeah, as much as this all sounds very depressing, we'll make sure that there is a link for the listeners and viewers, because we mustn't forget we're YouTubing as well. So that there is links for them to go and get some help, or email us, message us, contact us, and if we don't know who that you should talk to, we will make it our business to find out who you should talk to.
We can find out.
Yeah. So
we should talk about something light-hearted.
Yeah.
Highest of highs. I need to think about this, so you need to go first. Because I can't think.
So I can give a couple of examples of things that jump straight into my head.
Do it.
So, oh God, and this actually sounds quite bad as well, but so I was a police officer for 10 years with Avon and Somerset Constabulary, and that for me was a massive high getting that job, because I was a fair bit older than the rest of the intake. I was 28 when I started. Was I 28? 27? But there are a few, you take a lot of that with you, and you carry the burden of that role with you, and you use a lot of dark humour to get over the really awful times. But there are a couple of jobs that I went to that really stand out to me, that I know. So I'm not going to share those specific jobs, because it wouldn't be right of me to do so. But there was a couple of times I was involved in personally saving somebody's life, and those jobs, like, I'm talking people down off of high buildings and things who wanted to take their own lives. And there's a couple of incidences of that really stand out for me. And then I think, oh yeah, that was my highest high. But actually it was because I made such a difference to that person's life at that particular moment. And I'm not saying that I was the best woman for the job, but I was the best woman for the job at that time. It could have been any number of my colleagues. We've all got strengths, we've all got weaknesses. And it could have been somebody who isn't emotionally intelligent, but who's brilliant at doing like traffic policing, for example. And it could have been that they were the first to the job, but it was me, and I saved some lives that day, and that for me is a massive high. And I do like dealing with mental health issues, because I've got so much of it is relatable to me that it's kind of led me down the path that I'm going on now with veterans, mental health and welfare and support, and blue light services. So that was a huge high for me. I'd say having my kids, but do you know what? To be totally honest, labour and childbirth absolutely sucks. So I'm not going to sit here and lie and go, oh yeah, the birth of my children.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, for me, like I was saying earlier, I gave birth to Zachary, and in my head, and out loud, I was saying to people, my sister lost a baby a week ago. Like, and that's all I could think of. So my first labour and giving birth for the first time was actually not a nice experience for me, because I was very upset, very just distressed. It took a very, very long time, and just wasn't great. Second time around though, I actually did. I don't know if I would say it was high or even a
you were high,
but I was high. But no, the second time around was a really nice labour. I very much actually I would do that again. I don't want any more babies, but
I'd frown at you if I could frown.
Ray, where are you? That's my husband, by the way. No more babies, but I would do that again. Yeah. That was a really nice.
That's
easy
really good
birth.
though. The first time round wasn't a positive experience because of your personal circumstances, but the second time round you actually were into it enough to enjoy the experience.
I actually did enjoy it the second time, which is a bit weird.
And your kids are so cute.
They're okay. Oh, the light's gone on again. If you are just listening on the podcast, you should check out our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so you can see the lights flashing on and off in our makeshift studio.
Amazing production. So another high, I don't know, it's tricky for me. It's not a high as like a moment in time, but I really did enjoy a snippet of my life, which was 10 to 12 years ago, before I met my husband. Just before I met my husband. Before I met my husband, everything was great.
Sorry.
I'm going to leave the room. Awkward. No, because it was before I started working at Inmarsat as well, and before I met him. And I was living and working in London. Just as a single person, and that was a really great time in my life. I'd left uni. I went to university for not even a year, and it just was not for me. And actually, there's a massive low here and then a massive high, because I remember the day I just walked out of uni, went back to my parents' house and told them that I had left. And I expected I kind of expected my dad to be the one that was most disappointed and my mum to be kind of like a bit more laid back about it. But it was actually the other way around. And that was the time that I packed my bags and just moved to London, like Puss in Boots. Wrapped my things in a blanket.
I love that analogy.
Put it over my shoulder on the end of a long stick and walked to London. And I moved to London, and I was actually really quite down at that time in my life. I had been in a like a relationship. I had a boyfriend for like a few years, and we'd split up. I'd left uni, moved out of my mum and dad's house, and my mental health did take quite a hit at that time. And I moved to London and thought, right, I'm just going to go out and get a job, live somewhere, I'll be fine. And actually I was fine, and I absolutely loved it. And before I met my husband, I said I was just single. I don't mean like in a, what's the word I'm looking for?
It was an exciting time.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going out, like meeting men every day. I don't mean single like that.
Why not?
I just mean, well, maybe I was. But no, I just, it was just nice to have nothing to worry about and just live and work. I was presenting a radio show, which I carried on doing actually for years. I was freelancing for a record label, so I got to go to loads of gigs and concerts and festivals. Actually, for me, finding myself was moving away from my family and moving to London and just working and living and not having someone to answer to and just getting on with life. And that in itself, that time was a high.
I did exactly the same, but mine wasn't London. Mine was actually Tenerife, but only
and that's fine.
Because I was obsessed. When I was 12 years old, I went on a holiday to Tenby in West Wales. And it was such a miserable week, bad weather. My mum was like, God, what do you want to do with your birthday money? I think we went in the Easter holidays. My birthday's in January. And I was like, I saw a diving shop. And I said to her, I really want to give that a go. And I was so little, the guy had to carry me backwards off the beach into the sea and put my fins on my feet by standing me on a rock. The mask was so big on my head that it was just constantly letting in water. And the only thing that you could actually see in terms of visibility were a few mackerel. So it was harsh, but I loved it so much. It like from that moment on, the Easter holidays of my 12th year, I wanted to be a scuba diver.
Love it.
So when I was 23, and I'd come out of a really, really awful relationship, and like nothing was going right, and I felt like I needed that freedom as well. So it's like I'm not going to university. I don't know what to do for a job. No, sorry, I wasn't 23. I was 21. So it was quite a pivotal moment in my life, and I just thought, do you know what? I'm packing my bags and I'm going. Yeah. So I packed 3 bags, bought a one-way ticket, landed in Tenerife, got myself somewhere to live, and pretty much the same thing. And I had 2 years of I got lots of diving qualifications. I used to work for free so that they would then give me my diving qualifications. So I had a job where I worked for free in the day, apart from if I went to pools around hotels. I would get commission if I sold any diving. So living off commission, and then I used to work in a ticket sales shop at night. But I really did. I didn't do it the expat way. I did it, I learned how to speak Spanish.
You did it your way.
I did it the Alecia way. I learned how to speak Spanish. I lived with so many different housemates, but it was really a really international flat that we lived in. So there was like one of my best friends in the world who, at that time, who was Scottish. And other than that, we had a couple of Russian housemates, we had a French housemate, a German housemate, and then lots of South American housemates, because it's just a really good island to go to for diving and boats and tourist industry, because it's not particularly bad weather. It's like it's sunny 360 days a year, which doesn't exist. So yeah, and really found myself. And okay, in the last sort of 10 months that I was there, I literally ended up meeting someone, getting engaged very quickly, then fell pregnant and had the baby and got married all within the space of 11 months. That's a whole new podcast. But,
tune in next time.
Yeah, we're now divorced, but the good thing that came out of that is not only do we share an incredible son together, but actually my ex-husband, my first husband, is one of my best friends.
Yeah, I was going to say
We get
You've
on
got a great
so
friendship now.
well, and I absolutely adore his wife. She's an amazing stepmom to Ethan. I love the pair of them to bits. And, you know, if you had to pick some key people, like you're going to be on a boat, it's going to be Noah's Ark, and these are the people you're going to spend the rest of your life with, they'd be on it. Yeah, I think one of my highs is definitely allowing myself that couple of years out. I thought I might travel, but then I ended up coming back with a baby belly and a husband. But you know, the time that I spent out there discovering myself and being sort of like without responsibilities.
Yeah.
The only thing that I was responsible for was making sure that I could find food to put in my mouth and pay my rent.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, right? Because lots of people go to uni, and a lot of people would probably look back and say, actually, my time at uni was the best time of my life. You know, okay, neither of us did that. I gave it a little go and it wasn't for me. But that, maybe it's just those years, maybe it's that time before you commit to being an adult.
I think life is a journey of self-discovery. Definitely. And it is a journey, not a destination. But there are times in your life where you're just breezing along, and other times when you're really working on self-improvement, or you're really working on trying to get over a shit time that you've just been through. And I used to quit a lot of things, so I didn't try very hard at school. It just wasn't for me. I mean, I'm more academic now than I used to be, but I'm not particularly academic. I like to learn from doing, not from reading.
You're a doer.
I am a doer. I'm a mover and shaker.
You really are.
But yeah, everything that I tried and then left and quit, I say my mum, it's awful to bring her into it, but she used to make me feel like I wasn't worthy, because she'd say, oh, you quit everything you do, you know, you tried this musical instrument, you didn't do it. I actually went to college, and then I quit sort of 10 months down the line. Then I went back to school to try and redo part of my A-levels. Didn't enjoy it, quit after about 10 months. You know, everything that I've tried, my first marriage, essentially I was accused of being a failure for not being able to make that work. But I absolutely have been adamant about this one thing, and it's that if you try something and you don't complete that task, it's not about failure, it's about learning that thing isn't for you, and being brave enough to move on from it without wasting your life, because you literally are here once.
Absolutely. Yeah. I look back and think, do you know what, I've actually had a really good life so far, lots of ups and downs, but I wouldn't be here now if I hadn't made those decisions then. So, you know, I'm actually glad that I didn't stay at university. I'm glad I didn't get that degree. And actually, it was a BEd in primary teaching, so I would be a primary school teacher now, which I just couldn't. Oh my God, I
can't. if any of you actually knew Gillian, like, she brings out the best in me, but she brings out the worst in me as well. You would not want to leave your child to be taught by Gillian.
Imagine me being your child's primary school teacher.
No, I can't. It makes me feel sick.
But also, like, I love my children dearly. So my children are 2 and 5, and Alicia's are also 2 and 5 and 15 tomorrow. And I love them dearly, but I do think to myself, wow, like, imagine having children at home and then going to work and dealing with more children. Like, I go to work, like I said, I love my children dearly, but I work not just because I need and want to have the money and, you know, adult conversation. It's a very nice time to just be away from your children for a few hours every day, and away from your home life and responsibility and all of those things that come with having children. So to go to work and, like, be with more 5-year-olds.
I've got massive
I just don't think I could do it now.
People who do that, because couldn't.
No, I don't think I could either.
No, like, going back to the education thing, I think that's why we're quite similar. The University of Life was for us, and real university wasn't. And even though my only regret, not necessarily, sometimes you know what you're capable of and you know who you are, but it's convincing other people of that. Yeah. You're in a position where you've got a job that you want to be in for an employer that you want to work for. And unfortunately, I'm not, because I lost my career. I had to leave the police because my husband had a quite severe mental health breakdown, PTSD due to his military service. So I left to predominantly care for him and our children, whilst also going through another massive low in our lives. Now I'm at the point where he's built back up. He'll never work for anyone else again. So we've made the decision as a family that he will be the main carer for our children, and I'm going to go back out to work. But now I'm like, oh my God, what's this certification that I need? What do I need to say that I can do, that I know I can do, but I also
need to
you've
prove.
got all these people saying, well, have you got a certification in this? I'm like, oh no. But I've been on some courses this year. Like I went on a my security risk management consultancy course with Frontier Risks, and wow, literally made friends for life on that course. Was on an awesome course with awesome people. Had 2 weeks away from home, where I was literally living in what is considered to be like a 4-star accommodation because the food is phenomenal up at the Yorkshire
Love that
Emergency Planning College. And so many positive things came out of that. My network and my connections within the security industry now are unreal. And I wouldn't have done that if I'd have gone to university. No, so I still think, as much as it would have been nice to have that piece of paper that says, this is Alecia and she can do what she says she can do, I don't actually care, because I'm really enjoying educating myself as an adult. Yeah, it comes back to our main point of actually we are resilient, we are tenacious individuals who didn't necessarily follow the path that other people would have set out for us. But here we are. This is why we've ended up where we are, podcasting to you guys.
Recording a podcast.
Because we genuinely feel like we can cover off so many topics between us, including, female empowerment of females working in a male-dominated environment. We've got, children, so we can talk about parenting. We've got military links to, several different highly topical issues in relation to mental health. We're both involved in the adventure world and have worked and continue to work with some awesome brands and some awesome people. So this is a platform not only for us to be able to waffle on for 45 minutes about ourselves, but to be able to tell the lonely people out there, or the people out there having a hard time, you're okay. We've been through this too, and we can signpost you to people that can help you deal with it. And then equally, people who are within our remit and our reach, we can say, hey, come on the show, talk about yourselves, because they will then have other people that want to listen to their stories.
100%. And actually, whilst I'm going to do a bit of shoehorning now.
Go on.
Whilst you mentioned armed forces and military, we need to say thank you very much to Plymouth Armed Forces Awards.
Yeah.
Because Mitch and Lee at Plymouth Armed Forces Awards very kindly gifted us this Rode mic that we are speaking into and green screen, so that we could have some awesome kit for our podcast, and that was very kind of them. And we're going to be very involved with Plymouth Armed Forces Awards from now on, not because of that. We'd already agreed to be quite involved with them. I don't want to give too much away.
Basically, Mitch is a former Royal Marine, and my husband is as well. So I'd heard of Mitch before, and Mitch and Lee run a recruitment business where they try and help people from the forces into meaningful employment in Plymouth. So we also want to support local businesses as well, and that's where the connection initially came from. And they've been
they're awesome people, and we're going to be very involved with the awards, which are going to be next year in Plymouth. And we're going to get them on the podcast as well. They're a great couple of people to speak to. In fact, no, I'm not saying anything else.
What we can say, though, is when this podcast comes out on the 1st of January, and hope you're listening sort of either on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of January, first week of January, you have got until the 30th of January to cast your votes.
Indeed.
Now, what they're looking for is any veterans in business, veteran entrepreneurs, military spouse and partner entrepreneurs, and the wider military family.
People in the veteran and military community.
Who either own their own business, manage a business, or who have just done generally something really awesome for their community. There's lots of different categories that you can vote in, and it's for predominantly Plymouth, but obviously Plymouth is part of Devon. So if you think about people that have got military links in the southwest, and if some names spring to mind of how awesome people are and they've done something amazing for the veteran community or as a veteran themselves, then get on Plymouth Armed Forces Awards website. If you just Google Plymouth Armed Forces Awards, you will be able to find the details there, cast your vote. It's really important. They can't run these awards without people bothering to vote. So get your votes in by the 30th of January.
Yeah. Not just their website as well. Go check them out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Get on those pages. Yeah.
And as Gillian said, we'll be getting a lot more involved with that next year. And hopefully in the years to come, if it's a success, but it can't be a success without you, and certainly can't be a success without Mitch and Lee. So a huge thank you to them. And while we're on thank yous, apart from our amazing Plymouth Gin, which we've already mentioned, another incredible local business, we also have to thank Red Rock. Now, you know more about Red Rock than I do, so do you want to explain?
Well, Red Rock are a business in Plymouth that do design and printing. They are based in Plymouth, but they supply nationally. So if anyone needs anything printed for their businesses or for whoever, then get in touch on the Red Rock UK website. But they made us a couple of hoodies each and a couple of tops. So Alicia's sporting the t-shirt right now. Again, if you're on the podcast, you won't be able to see, but that's why you should also check out the YouTube channel. And I have the hoodie on. So yeah, they've made us a little bit of merch, and they will probably make us some more at some point as well. Maybe we'll have a little web shop. People can buy things from us.
Don't reveal too much.
Zip. But yeah, Gavin and David at Red Rock, thank you very much for making us these awesome garments.
Yeah, apparel I think is the trendy thing to say.
I should say apparel, yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
definitely. And
last but not least, what else is always really important to share is that we are produced by Locked On Media.
We are.
And we would like to say a massive thank you to Locked On Media, who are going to be putting all of this together for us.
Thank you, Locked On Media.
It is little old Gillian and I, literally both, we work full-time jobs, we've got our kids, we do all of our stuff for charity, we're both responders for Team Rubicon, and I'm an ambassador for a couple of other charities, as is Gillian. So we are busy people, but we just thought that this podcast was a natural progression for us, and we wanted to be able to share your stories. It's as much your podcast as it is ours. We would also like to give a final shout out to our patrons, because although we've been gifted some like the green screen, the Rode mic, some refreshments, we are also being supported by Patreon. So if you are interested in helping us develop and build this podcast so that we can then go on to help other people share their stories, please have a look at our website, www.wildonespodcast.co.uk, and at the bottom of the home screen you will see a little box. If you tick Patreon, you can sign up for as little or as much as you like each month, and that money will go towards and that money will go towards being able to get our guests here, being able to run this. There is a running cost obviously that comes out of our pockets, but we have 3 patrons at the moment.
Thank you, patrons.
So much. And yeah, encourage your friends and family to support us in helping get our message out to a wider community and sharing your bravery, your adventure, and your resilience stories across the globe.
Yeah, and yeah, I will say again, thank you very much, patrons, because we weren't expecting to have any yet. 3. I love it.
It is like, this is so random for us, and we're wrapping up now, but it feels really weird that everyone is going to be listening to this on hopefully New Year's Day when we launch.
Yeah,
we had no idea where it was going. We just knew that we wanted to talk to each other for our listeners to gain a more of an understanding about us. And I literally feel like we've skimmed the surface.
I know, I feel like there's loads of things, like we've not really talked at all. I've mentioned like a couple of things that have happened in my life.
All right, so here's a final question for you. And I'm gonna do the one that you hate.
Oh my god!
So you have to pick 3 words of if I was gonna interview you again, and I gave you 3 subject matters, what 3 things would you cover off that you want to talk about most next?
Work history. Childhood and upbringing, including teenage years.
Teenage angst?
Teenage angst, yeah, kind of like childhood into teenage angst. Work. And
Do you want to park it and come back?
I'll park it for a minute. You.
Yeah. Mine would be hashtag get outside. Because
Okay.
when I had a huge mental health breakdown, I was still serving as a police officer, and I think it was a combination of things that had just been going really, really wrong for years, and there was a straw that broke the camel's back. And although I don't remember what that was now, my dog, who sadly now has passed away, he was what kept me alive. And I'd love to be able to say, I know it was my husband or my kids, but actually it was my dog. And it was taking that dog for a walk every day, because on a basic level, I had to get out of the house to walk my dog. And getting out of the house every day and walking down by the river, and it was winter time, and just walk, like the only sound I could hear was the crunch of frost under my feet and the sound of the river. And then just sitting in the winter sunshine on a rock halfway round before going back round again. Like literally doing that every day for about 4 months was the only reason why I left the house. And that saved my life. So hashtag get outside for me. Every time I'm down, I literally put my walking boots on and I will get out. I'm a pack horse, not a racehorse. So yeah.
I'm just a horse.
Okay, that's also probably a whole other podcast that we won't share with anyone else. So yeah, get outside. And if you don't know about the Get Outside campaign, have a look for hashtag Get Outside on Twitter, because it links you through to Ordnance Survey. So that's handy. Another one would be Team Rubicon, because I literally feel like I filled a massive gap in my life.
Speak about Team Rubicon. We need to talk about that at length.
At length. And then my third and final one would be veterans and military mental health. Because it's just such a big issue for me that's very current, and it's in my life, and it's been in my life for the last 3 years since my husband's breakdown. And I've been campaigning behind the scenes for a long time. I mean, you could say behind the scenes. I did go on Lorraine Kelly to talk about it.
I was going to say behind the scenes. Oh, but I was on TV.
So yeah, those are my top 3
Prime
things.
time. Yeah.
So I think that's it for like week 1. I think we've like completely bombarded people. Hopefully you
I feel like we've talked about so much and so little at the same time.
I'm really excited to share these talks with guests as well.
Yeah.
We have got a lineup of guests come and talk to us, and hopefully
really
you guys
excited
to listen to. There may be some weeks because we're working or because we can't physically get to our guests, or our guests can't get to us. But on the weeks where that happens, we are open to suggestions about topics that you would like us to cover off.
Yeah. And if you don't give us topics, we will just talk.
Okay, so you have been listening to Wild Ones podcast. My name is Alecia.
My name is Gillian.
This has been brought to you by Locked On Media, and
thank you, sponsors.
We have pulled something out of the bonkers bag today, and we will continue to do so every week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Bye.